video is all about how I use my bullet journal now, how I used to use it when I was in NP school to organize my life, work, and family. We'll talk about how I kind of customized it to what I needed and some fun things that I used to stay motivated during school with it. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Liz. I'm a family nurse practitioner, and I am a firm believer that a good planner can save your life, or at least your sanity, maybe both. I originally got into bullet journaling when I was in NP school, and my traditional planner was not fitting in with my not very traditional life and schedule. It was essentially my entire life kind of all packed into one journal. Now, before we dive into this bad boy, I did want to thank Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. If you aren't familiar with Skillshare, they're an online learning platform used by over 7 million other people who enjoy learning new things and developing new skills. They have over 25,000 different classes in topics like business, design, writing, how to draw pretty doodles in your bullet journal, or write in lovely calligraphy so that even when your life is chaos, your bullet journal is not. I recently watched a video on Skillshare called Sketchbook Illustration for All that walked you through how to do basic doodles and make collages so that your bullet journal can look pretty. It was super helpful in pointing out the basics of how to sketch things that you see in real life and gave me some really good ideas to add some vibrance to some of my bullet journal pages that are a little bit boring because I'm really not a naturally creative person at all. And this kind of gave me a process that I could follow with steps, and your girl loves steps and processes. That I can do. You can gain access to Skillshare's entire library of videos with an annual subscription that is less than $10 a month. You can also try it out for 2 months for totally free using the link in my description box. I'll have it right at the top. So whether you're fueling your curiosity, creativity, or you just want to elevate your bullet journal game just a wee bit, Skillshare is the perfect place to learn and thrive in 2019. All right. Bullet journals. First, I thought we would just go over what a bullet journal is. But if you are not familiar, I will warn you. Bullet journaling is a deep, dark, black hole. It is very easy to fall into. It will suck up maybe hours of your life. So approach with caution. This is like the dark side. Come with me to the dark side, friends. All right, so this is a bullet journal. I personally really like this loose term one. I will leave a link to it in the description box down below. But in reality, guys, it really doesn't matter which one you get. But when you're picking one out, I would try to find one with dots on it. See how this one has little dots? And having numbered pages is really helpful. This has both of those. Again, I really liked this one, but whatever one you find is perfectly fine. And you'll see why you want the dots in a little while. I suppose even if you had lines instead of dots, it would still work, but the dots are kind of just a little bit cleaner and gives it a cuter vibe. So obviously, when you buy your bullet journal, it is totally blank, so you will be making your own planner, journal, all of that out of this blank book. The idea of a bullet journal is that it's your planner, your journal, your life organizer, your confidant, all that good stuff rolled into one little thing. And you can personalize it however you want. I will leave a link below to all of my favorite bullet journaling, like markers and pens and stuff that I've kind of acquired. Like I said, guys, it's a black hole. You acquire things. I will leave the link to my favorite ones down below, but you can really use whatever. You can go crazy. You also don't have to decorate it at all. I have had times, especially when I first started bullet journaling, where I attempted to like doodle in mine and make it creative. It was kind of my outlet for me then. You know, I could just like spend a little bit of time each week and like do this as my creative outlet. But now that I have other creative outlets, AKA YouTube, I spend a lot less time decorating it, like almost none. And I have a very minimal but functional design going on. Now we have our equipment. We know what this thing is. Let's talk about setting up your bullet journal, because that can seem kind of overwhelming since it's blank and there's nothing to really go on, but really it's not that bad. And like with your decorations, you can make your bullet journal setup as elaborate or as simplistic and minimal as you want. So like I said earlier, I'm not the most creative person. I used Amanda Rachley. She's a YouTuber that does bullet journaling to kind of inspire all of my setups and everything. So I will leave a link to her channel down below. And she does videos on like how to set up the whole year, how to set up each month, and then her weekly spreads as well. A spread is just a page in a bullet journal. That's the lingo. Now you're cool. But I, in the beginning, kind of went really hardcore with hers and tried to imitate it almost exactly. And now, like I said, I use her basic idea, but make it much more simple. But she's an excellent resource if you need some ideas for how to set up your bullet journal. And when I say set up, I just mean add the calendar and everything. Obviously, if it's a totally blank notebook, you're going to need to add the planner aspects into it. and whatever else you want to track. So when I first started doing this, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to need and what I wouldn't need, so I just kind of copied hers exactly. So I'll put it up here. I put my whole calendar in here. I wrote all of that out. I also did monthly planning, which isn't a bad idea. I didn't add mine to this year because I just use my phone for this. If I want to know what I'm doing every month, I enter that into my phone, and then I use it more on a weekly and monthly basis now. So if it seems super overwhelming and you're like, I don't even have time to add all of that in, I hear you. Honestly, I did not for 2019 add the annual calendar or the monthly overview like this because, like I said, I just use my phone and then go through the month, but you certainly could, and it gives you kind of a nice visual of a calendar if you need it. And she goes through all of these things and how to actually set them up. Now, since it is blank, you will have to add in all your different months, and then you have to make your spreads every week for your week because, hello, it's blank. It does take a little bit of time. Now it takes me about 20 minutes a week, which I really think is not bad. I mean, that kind of is how long it takes me to organize my thoughts anyway. And it gives me kind of a fun thing to just sit down, sip on a cup of coffee, and like focus on and do for a minute while I collect my life. So I'm not gonna walk you through exactly how to set everything up because, like I said, Amanda's an amazing resource. Watch her channel down below. I'll just flip through up here a couple of the different pages that I really enjoyed and found useful, and maybe you will too. So I listed some of my goals. I had some favorite memories. Obviously, I didn't really fill that out very much. I have this family menu, which I would write down all of our favorite foods. That way, if I didn't know what kind of food we like, I was like, I need to make dinner, but I don't know what to make. I had that in there and I could just look at it really quick. Obviously, this is very personalized and you can make it whatever you need to. Okay, so let's talk about how I used my bullet journal while I was in school. I get this question all the time, so I thought we'd spend some time looking at that. So this was my favorite type of setup for when I was doing my bullet journal while I was in school. One thing a lot of bullet journal people do is they will do different symbols for different events. So like a dot is something I need to do. I can turn that into an X when I've already completed the activity. And for me, a triangle was something I needed to go to. So if you're looking at them, that's kind of where I'm coming from. But you can see on this one, on the left side, I use that as my to-do list. And on the right-hand side, I use that as my tracker when I had to either go to campus or go to work or go to a Zoom, which is like a interactive online classroom event for school. I also usually had a section for notes where I could document like, hey, this is what's going on. If anything came up during the week, I could write out dinner menus if I needed it, whatever I kind of needed. So there's a few examples of what that looked like there. I also would kind of go through spurts where I would color code things. So like all doctor's appointments would be in blue, assignments would be in pink. Whatever kind of keeps you organized, just do that. Other things I did to try to keep organized was just listing my assignments. I would put them down on my calendar on the day they were due, both on the monthly and the weekly spread. Really, this part is just gonna kind of look like your traditional planner. So if you're sitting there and you're like, why would you bother with all this if you use it like a regular planner? There's lots of other stuff in here that I used it for. So this is where we kind of diverge. So I also, you can see, kind of used it intermittently as a journal. I'm not a great journaler, but I try sometimes. And during this time, you know, like I said earlier, like doodling was helpful at one point. Journaling seemed to be helpful at a different point. I would kind of journal in between the pages. Another thing that was really, really nice that is fun to look back on now is I did a gratitude portion. So every day I would just write down one thing I was grateful for. And that was a really good way to, especially in a time of stress, be able to look back and be like, even though it's stressful, there are good things, and look at all these good things that happen every day. So I would encourage you to do that if you're in a time of, really any time. I still like to do that to this day. Okay, let's see. What other school related stuff did I put in here? Oh, okay. So I had a clinical countdown as well as a days of school countdown. That way I could cross something off at the end of every single day because crossing things off is just therapeutic for me. I also used it to keep track of all of my clinical hours, what days and who they were with. A lot of schools will use the program Typhon to keep track of your clinical skills, but I kept track of it in Typhon, but I also used my bullet journal to keep track of my clinical skills. So say I needed to do 10 PAPs that semester or 20 well child checks, I could write it down in here because I found it was easier to keep track of the numbers in here than it was on there. So it's a good way to keep track of those types of things. And it's a visual reminder of like, oh man, I really need to remind my preceptor or like see if she can scout these out for me somehow to get these patient hours in. Another thing I kept track of in here was the list of the things that I was seeing the most commonly. That way I could create reference sheets from them. And that is how I actually created my NP binder, was I just looked at, what do I see all the time? And if you want to check out my NP binder, it's my reference that I use in primary care a lot. I will leave the link to that down below. Okay, let's see. I kept a list of my preceptors and their contact information. In case it's not evident, everything I did in my life, I just wrote down in my bullet journal, just in case. That way I didn't have to worry about anything having to remain like floating around in my head. I could just word vomit it all onto paper where it remained very safely and I knew I could find it later. It made my life a lot more manageable. And that's the basics of what I had in here for school. Obviously, you can modify yours however you want and make changes however you want. You see mine like changes and progresses over time as I learned like, oh, this is actually a way easier method for me. And it kind of just evolves with you over time. So after I graduated from school, the next thing I really used it for was studying for boards. I made a whole schedule for myself for studying for boards that I could, with topics of like what I needed to cover that day. And then I could cross it off and make sure I was keeping on track. And then when it came time to apply for jobs, I also kept that in here. I would write down every job I applied to, what platform I applied to it on. So was it ZipRecruiter? Was it Indeed? I wrote down the job description, like a brief bit of that, where it was located, the hours, and then I had a box next to it for like, have I heard back yet? So that I could check it off the list or know like, hey, I want to follow up here. While we're talking about jobs, I also, in the back of my bullet journal, wrote down little notes about myself. If you're anything like me, you blank under pressure. So even though in a time of total calmness, I can, explain to you that, oh yeah, I did all these hours in family practice. I've done, X, Y, and Z skills very comfortably. This is my nursing background. And this is why I think those skills will translate really well into helping me be a provider. All of that goes out the window when you're on the phone with someone and trying to explain these skills. So I wrote them down in the back of my notebook, and that was so helpful because for the job I currently have, though, my boss called me and I thought it was my realtor, so I picked up, because you never actually pick up the phone when a number you don't know is calling you. So I picked up thinking it was my realtor from North Carolina trying to find us a house because we were moving. Turns out it was a potential job. And she was like, can I just ask you, like, do an initial interview like right now? I was like, yeah, that's totally fine. So I was able to run in here, look in the back of my notebook and find like, oh, okay. Like I remember that like what my name is and what I went to school for now, because that had left my mind at the moment. So things like that, like I said, anything that's in your brain should probably go down on paper, and this is a good place to store it. Other totally random things that I kept in here that would be maybe a fun idea for you if you're diving into this was I documented my daughter's milestones. So every month I just kind of wrote down new things that she was doing, which has been so cool to look back on now. Like I said, I kept that gratitude journal kind of going, which was really nice. I had a portion for my house, like when I did house update things, like changed my, car's oil and the air filters. And by that, I mean when my husband did it, but since I wrote it down, it's kind of like I did it. Do I get credit for that? I once, in the beginning, you'll see here, tried to do habit tracking, which is very popular in the bullet journaling world, where you can kind of like write down, I'll show you, I'll leave an example here of what a habit tracker is. You'll see it's very empty because I didn't have a lot of habits because I was in chaos. So this just made me depressed, so I stopped because I was realizing I'm not doing any of these healthy habits. Let's not point it out to myself, I'll just stop. But a lot of people really do like them, and I could see how it would be helpful, so you could always go check that out. Some people do expense tracking. I did a few months of where I did like, these are my favorite things this month. Now I keep track of like what books I'm listening to, or some favorite like podcasts, favorite new media things that I'm running into. That's always a fun idea. So finally, let's wrap up and I'll just show you kind of what my bullet journal looks like today. As you can see, it is much more minimal. It's just kind of more like a regular planner. I have special events highlighted. I have work obviously in green, appointments are in blue. On the sides here, I just have notes. I have what I can plan out for like my YouTube and Instagram content. You could do what you're eating for dinner or whatever you need it to be. And then in between, I have some journaling pages. I keep up with Avery's updates, my YouTube schedule on there. I have different like collaborations I might be working on, all of that, as well as some journaling and just whatever I need in between there. And I really think that's my favorite part about bullet journaling in general, is just how flexible it is and how there's so much room for all the other things you want to keep track of in life, but you can kind of do it all in one spot. So I know that was kind of scattered and all over the place, but that's kind of what I use my bullet journal for now, how I've used it before, and hopefully it gave you some ideas for maybe yours if you want to start one. And if you don't want to dive in that deep, dark black hole, by all means don't, because you can get lost in it. And just remember, you don't need to pour all the time into it. I feel like a lot of people think it's this huge, crazy undertaking. You really can get it done very efficiently. Like I said, now I spend like 20 minutes on it, and that seems totally manageable to me. So There we go. All right, hope this video was helpful for you guys. Again, if you're new, I'm Liz. I make videos on content stuff, like usually nursing and NP related, sometimes some other goodies thrown in there on Tuesdays. And I have a weekly vlog on Saturday where I document my life as a family nurse practitioner in and out of work. Also head over to Instagram where I post like more, maybe what my bullet journal looks like that week, what I'm doing in life and learning at work and all that good stuff. Question of the day is, what is your favorite type of planner? This is my favorite type I've encountered so far. Before that, I just used like the cheap whatever I could find at Target. I've never tried an Erin Condren one, but those do like mildly fascinate me. I don't know if I'm ready to make that plunge. So let me know down below what your favorite type of planner is and why. And I'm gonna try to refrain from buying all of them because I do have a planner problem. I did before, this solved that. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a fabulous rest of your day and I'll see you next time. Bye.